Welcome back to the Free Spirits Podcast, where we dive into the functional and THC beverage industries. We will be exploring the brand stories and operations that redefine how we relax, connect, and socialize. I'm your host, Lars Miller, and here today is my co-host, David Gonzalez. And before we kick things off, if you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe and leave us a review wherever you get your podcast. And today I'm thrilled to be joined by Art Massolo, the VP of Business Development at Cycling Frog, one of the fastest growing THC beverage brands in the country. We'll be getting into Art's journey, the rise of Cycling Frog, and the future of THC beverages. David, I know you have a pretty personal connection with Cycling Frog. If you want to kick us off with that story, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So Art, I wanted to inform you before we dive in that Cycling Frog was my first. It was my first introduction to this new category, first THC beverage I ever tried. And I remember that experience very vividly. I was out one day, just wrapped up working for the day, went to a bar with my wife, and we sat down at dinner. I think it was Tiff's Bar in St. Paul. And I looked at the menu, and my mind just got blown. There was a whole category for THC beverages, and I had no idea these existed, that they were a thing. But I remember just trying one, having no idea what was going to happen next. I'm out in public with my wife, sipping on a THC drink. I'm like, God, I hope I can drive home after this. I'm just going to go for it. So I have it. Felt incredible. There's this weird positive feedback loop. It was like, oh, I'm not sober, but I'm not totally baked. I'm not drunk. This is a new sensation. And so Art, I remember this vividly. The next day, I go to your website, I go to the store locator, I go, there's got to be more of these things around here somewhere. And I went to Surdyk's and I bought every single Cycling Frog that was on the shelf at Surdyk's. I wiped out maybe 6 cases across 3 different flavors, and I just started sharing these things. They were good, they were delicious, and all of a sudden I was like, wow, this is something brand new. It was exciting. It was kind of this eureka moment. And so that was my first experience, but would love to hear yours.
Well, first of all, podcast over. That's great. Thank you.
But how did you get involved with Cycling Frog? When was that eureka moment where you went, ooh, I'm going to join and get involved in this new category in this company?
Mine began with a lot of incredulity, so I didn't really believe what was coming out of the mouth of Sequoia Price Lazarus when he called me to interview me for a job in Seattle to be the chief revenue officer of Lazarus Naturals, our parent company. And he said, what do you know about the beverage industry? And I said, well, that's been my career. I've been doing this for 30 plus years. And we started talking about it. He said, listen, I know that I've been in hemp for 7 years, which was a decision that I made while in the alcohol industry to kind of move into more of a health and wellness side of the business, where I could still hopefully provide something that gave you a buzz. I didn't think it was going to be as fast as this, but I was planning on doing stuff in the beverage side of this THC space. But I got into hemp. So, in the hemp industry, we made CBD. We tried to figure out how to do CBN, CBG, other, main molecules out of the hemp plant. And we always remediated our THC out of our mother liquor, out of our distillate, whatever it might be. And we kept those in DEA boxes at Mile High Labs, at Next Frontier Brands, the 2 places where I worked. And so when Sequoia told me that they've just launched this drink called Cycling Frog in Minnesota, this was the end of 2021. I was like, no way, impossible. You guys, can you even send me samples? And so right. Sequoia's like, yeah, sure. So about a week later, I received samples. I tasted them. I probably had 2 or 3, so I had about 15 milligrams in me. And I'm like, holy moly, this is actually working. This is what on earth? This can't be possible. Then I talked to all my lawyer friends, figured out, looked at the COAs like everybody does, and I was like, this is actually real. So I went at it head first. I was like, this is the most incredible thing ever. I thankfully really enjoyed the tastes and flavors that they had. I thought the packaging was good. The name was really interesting. And I'm like, I think this has some teeth.
Yeah. You mentioned that, you have a background in CPG. You obviously have an extensive background in entrepreneurship, having founded a few different wineries as well. Can you talk a little bit about, the lessons you learned from those industries and those experiences that have helped, guide your leadership at Cycling Frog?
Sure. I was thrown into the global wine industry back in 1993, 94. I started a couple wineries in Chile, Connoisseur and Trivento. And those thankfully are both, 7+ million case brands and have done really well around the world. So I was only there for 7 or 8 years. So really building the footprint of that stuff. But what you learn when you're presenting, we were in a niche category in Chile and Argentina. Nobody really knew about them in the UK or the United States. It was like before any of the real big international brands other than like Reuniti and things like that were existing in the US market. And so we were launching something totally new. These Chilean brands got together. They formed these associations, much like the Hemp Beverage Alliance and the Cannabis Beverage Association. And we used to travel in these big groups, these big packs of Chileans and Argentines, and doing tastings and getting the name of Chile and Argentina out there. So, what I learned from the wine industry, which is slightly different than the beer and spirits space, is that this stuff is produced in every country. It's an agricultural product. Talk about soil a lot. You talk about seeds a lot. You talk about, the entire production process. So the similarities between wine and hemp/marijuana cannabis plant were incredibly similar. So I think that a lot of what the wine industry taught me, the fact that there's 1,000 SKUs on a shelf, and how the hell can you sell your Cabernet from Chile that tastes very similar to everybody else's? How do you actually market that and sell that properly? So, I think taking, the best practices from the 30 years of trying to build brands into this space, I think really has, moved the beverage space pretty quickly. I mean, you've seen 2.5 years ago, guys, I was on the phone with distributors every single day, sending emails, text messages, however, being introduced by the top guys of the entire industry, and no one was interested. It wasn't until I went to the MBWA show, where we were the only brand in 2022, where we met our first willing distributor, which was Gasco and Meyer up in New York. And we started shipping to them February 2023. And now I tell people who are starting out, it's like, hey man, there's been a huge path made for you. There's a really interesting opportunity now where we're getting calls from distributors. We're not needing to pitch. So those people getting in today really should be thankful and grateful that, companies out there that I think there's 100 brands now have been paving the way these past couple of years. Yeah, it's been fun. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah,
I guess.
no, absolutely. Well, I think what's really interesting about what you describe is you're talking about, wine as a comparable category to this whole THC beverage mania that's taken over. And you're right. You're basically part of the foundation for growing that category as a whole. And so you're right. Yourselves, others have been trailblazers to help lay that foundation so that others don't have to figure all these things out along the way, which helps that velocity, so to speak. So
I've also just a really interesting point. I mean, one of the reasons why I got into the hemp industry is because we were much closer to the CPG side of possibilities, right? We were we could sell our stuff to topical manufacturers, to beverage companies, whoever, much more in tune to what I was used to. But I have to tell you that I still believe that the cannabis industry is a lot more similar to the wine industry. The fact that you can get incredibly profound weed experiences all over the world where different terroirs are. And, there's only, it's not just Humboldt County here, guys. I mean, there's places in Chile and Argentina and Bulgaria and Australia that grow incredible weed. And the fact that, I always saw this as being this product that could be exported across countries and on ships and produced and then, but somebody 15 years ago invented this dispensary system, which, as you guys have seen, isn't always working. It's unfortunate for the folks that have had to put millions and millions and millions of dollars in there. And I can totally understand why they're confused, upset, frustrated with the hemp industry because we've been given different guardrails. But yeah, I would love to see eventually, like we are at Total Wines and More, that there should be tons of different types of form factors. We should have adjacent to flower shops, adjacent to wine shops. There should be flower shops. The fact that my wife isn't going to go into a dispensary to buy weed, she'd much prefer to just stick to what she's used to doing, which is just taking a cart, filling it up with stuff, and then getting home. So that's the dream, guys.
Great
It's a
dream.
great segue. I was going to say, Art, do you have a vision of one day maybe a consolidation of dispensaries and liquor stores, maybe like a one-stop shop Vice Mart, if you will?
Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily even know I think it's as simple as giving people over the age of 21 the option to buy whatever the hell they want to. We're all for regulation in the hemp industry, and we are all for 21 plus.
Yep.
And that has changed over the past, 7 years that this hemp industry has been. I mean, CBD doesn't have it. It's an 18 plus, I believe, is CBD, but full spectrum hemp has THC in it. So anybody buying a full spectrum hemp thing, whether you're 18 years old or not, like that has THC in it. Right. And so, we've had to learn over time, and I think the drinks helped a lot, guys, is that, who are you selling this to? At the beginning, we're like, hey, it's CBD, it's hemp. 18-year-olds can buy this. But that was 2.5 years ago. Now that we're much more in tune with the alcohol industry, the whole industry is behind this 21 plus. So
absolutely,
the dream would be to be able to go to bars, restaurants, retailers, wine shops, liquor stores, any place you're used to buying anything intoxicating or, over 21. We should be able to put flour in there. We should be able to put joints in there. We should be able to put anything. If you're over 21, sell it to them.
I like it. So, Art, switching gears on you a little bit, you mentioned that you've basically been approached, and it sounds like Cycling Frog as a brand had already been created. Kind of the ethos, the brand behind it was created when you stepped into it. So one of my questions for you was, what was the inception of that brand? What was the process for that brand? How did you, as a team, and even if you can speak to it in retrospect, how did you guys come up with this idea of a frog on a bicycle? And how did that translate to THC beverages? Like, what was that whole process like?
It's a penny farthing, which is a great name for those old bikes.
Penny farthing. Okay, not a bicycle.
Sequoia Price Lazarus, the founder of Lazarus Naturals and Cycling Frog, is a young man whose grandfather owned a printing press, and that penny farthing with a frog on it was the logo of that printing press company. And so Sequoia kept that over time. A couple of cool marketing guys got in with Sequoia and said we should make a drink out of this, and created Cycling Frog. It really hasn't changed that much. We've added a couple of, we had a whole bunch of different looking labels and a whole bunch of different things. We've kind of solidified that, but we are doing seasonal products that have a different style of a frog. We're trying new things. So I wish there was a better story, like, hey, people who get stoned should ride bicycles really fast down mountains, but I don't know. That's not the story.
Got real high and thought you saw a frog on a bicycle, something like that. Sure.
I wish.
That's a really awesome story. You mentioned the seasonal beverages. Will there be, I'm a sucker for all things fall. So will there be a pumpkin spice latte?
No, there's not going to be a pumpkin spice latte. We are launching 10 milligram mocktails, maybe just two SKUs within the next few months. It's pretty interesting, like places like Minnesota, and David, I believe you live in Minnesota, correct?
Yeah.
Places like Minnesota are telling us every day that we need to have a 10 milligram. It's the most popular thing. People are buying it off the shelves. It's going to go crazy. I kind of believe that. I also know that I've witnessed this for 2.5 years. There's not a lot of people who can drink 10 milligrams or eat a 10 milligram gummy. Yep. We would rather sell more cans of product at low dose, which would be more like the domestic beer or craft beer world. Heavier dosage, I think, in Minnesota, once the rec market starts to hit and you guys really do get 450 new stores over the next couple of years, that I think that higher dose product, I think you're going to see a bit of a shift to people asking for lower doses when they go out. I think they're still buying this 10 milligram as a replacement for the fact that they don't have any place else to go for higher dose stuff.
Yeah, that's been my experience, is that I would rather have 3 to 5 in a session, if you will, over several hours versus starting with that 10 or even higher milligram dosage.
Like I didn't think the 1 milligram or the 2 milligram drinks that we have are going to work, but watching a group of 50-year-old, 40-year-old women drinking 1 to 2 milligrams all night And, maybe at the end of 4 hours, they've got 5 to 10 milligrams inside of them. That's a great buzz for them. For me, I would need, like a keg worth of that, right? So to each his own. I think that for a daily stoner type person, higher dosages are always going to work. I think for the typical consumer who likes to have 2 or 3 White Claws, 3, glasses of rosé, maybe a couple of margaritas at a sitting, I'm not telling you all together, maybe 2 gin and tonics over a night, you're replacing those things with 2, 3, 4 cans or drinks of this sort. Yeah. So if I drank, 3 or 4 10 milligram ones, I'm going to be pretty damn stoned. Well, eventually I think that this is all going to pan out. As this is post-prohibition. We're all trying to figure out this whole thing.
Right. So I kind of want to shift gears into the business side of things with Cycling Frog. And can you walk us through the strategy that you guys go through when you're choosing to enter a new market or a new state? Obviously, regulations are constantly moving, and there's the constant skies falling news like out of California and things like that. So how do you guys weigh that risk and reward as you're entering a new market?
Well, I think unfortunately we can't be as strategic as we'd like to. There's a lot of throwing stuff on a wall and seeing what sticks. As I said 2.5 years ago, 99.9% of the distributors would say no to us. And so, did we take the first distributors that say yes? 100% we did. And we're still with those distributors that said yes at the beginning. And the reason why is because they're usually the smaller guys, mostly in craft spirits, craft beers, craft wines, natural wines. And, those groups were losing money because of the decrease in volumes in those spaces. So we immediately replaced volume, and we immediately replace commission structures for the sales teams within those small groups. We would love to have a much more strategic play, like if the Southerns or the Wine Bows or the Breakthroughs or the RNDCs or the actual InBev group got together and said, hey, AB distributors, this is 100%, go for it, let's do this. Then it becomes a little bit more of an interesting, strategic play. I think that, at least the next 2 to 4 years, 5 years, depending on whether we win the federal battle that we have against the Mary Miller Amendment. If we win that and we still get to play for a couple more years before real regulations and next steps come in, the big guys like the AB houses that we work with and the Miller Coors houses that we work with, and, people are spreading out pretty largely into those spaces now. You'll find that those are big moving, slow moving ships, right? 100, 200 sales reps. You're not going to get the buy-in of all of them immediately. They're selling Tito's, they're selling Miller Lite, they're selling things that move all the volume and make them the money. So as soon as we can start getting a bit more of a comfortable foothold into the markets, like even in Tennessee, where with Lipman Brothers is the first, group to get a license in the state of Tennessee, we're being very patient. We know that they're a slow moving ship, that they've got a whole bunch of sales guys that are very interested in this product and a whole community that has no idea what this stuff is. So bigger groups are used to like moving volume, and you really have to handhold this stuff. So we'd like to get to a point where there's a definite strategy where these products go, where they should be placed next to, which we've been doing. And then eventually enough education and enough stuff will be given to these sales guys where this is going to be like selling Pepsi or Coke or Tito's or the bigger volume brands.
Yeah, Art, I think I was blown away by one of the comments you made when we were at the Hemp Beverage Festival in Minnesota, because I go, if you guys are everywhere, you must have a distributor. Like you have to. There's so many different points of distribution around Minnesota, and you looked at me and you're like, yeah, we don't have one in Minnesota.
Well, this was Burnix. Burnix is great.
Oh, okay, you got Mega
Burnix.
Burnix.
We do not have a distributor in St. Paul and Minneapolis where 80% of the volume is going to be, right? Sure. And the reason for that is, well, we haven't been able to see eye to eye with a couple of distributors.
Sure.
A couple of them want our product to be bottled in the state of Minnesota, but we're going to get there. But we have a really strong D2C presence. We have a very strong DSD presence where, if you order a certain amount of product, you can and pass our credit applications, you can become a DSD distributor. I believe, David, you were one of those, and you're able to buy the product. It comes to your warehouse. We can actually drop ship to other places that you say we need to drop ship to. And that's mostly to smoke shop, vape shops, C-stores, independents. And then we have the third portion of our revenue model, which is with alcohol distributors.
Yeah, that's kind of what blew my mind. I always sat there and I was like, how the hell do you guys have such good prices for this bulk of products? Because you were one of the only people we would order pallets from, because otherwise it was just astronomical, and it would be a huge risk on my part, because I go, if I order a pallet of this and this doesn't move, I'm stuck with stale inventory, and then all of a sudden my budget for any other products that do move is gone. And so I was very curious about the unit economics of not having an in-state distributor, but still having all these places and points of distribution without one. So my question for you then is, you mentioned that you guys are still making products in Oregon. Everything is made in Oregon right now?
Yeah,
currently?
so I'll tell you the whole kind of process. So we own our own genetics. We have around 500 acres of hemp outside of Bend, Oregon. In that facility, we do our initial extraction into mother liquor, some distillates. From there, we ship them to our facilities in Portland and Seattle, where we do different types of, formulations. In the Portland facility, we just invested in a whole new building, by the way, as well, so we can get more cold storage. Within that facility, they do gummies, topicals, pills, soft gels, and I believe in our Seattle headquarters, we do all of the beverage formulations. So we put all the natural juice concentrate, all of our proprietary formulations. We do our own nano emulsification. We place all of that into totes, and those have to go into refrigerated space. Those totes then are shipped to our contract bottlers. So we really do have a full chain of custody, much like the marijuana industry has. We're one of the few hemp companies that actually does all of that. So we can control our costs probably a little bit better than a lot of the companies out there, and therefore we're able to offer EDLP prices throughout the United States. So yeah, our 6-packs are retailing at $19.99 in every state.
Yes. Wow. So obviously, like you just walked us through, you guys own your own hemp farm and handle all your nanoemulsions. So what was that decision-making process to become, vertically integrating versus utilizing outside partners like most of the other beverage companies do? So
listen, Sequoia, it's been a real pleasure working with Sequoia and the team that he's built. Lazarus Naturals and Cycling Frog together have, over 100 employees, and a lot of them have been in the company. It's a 10-year-old company. So, we're one of the original hemp companies of the Pacific Northwest. And so, Sequoia is very, very careful. He's a careful guy. He's very thoughtful, and he makes sure that what we're offering, the first thing he ever said to me is that we want to make products affordable for everybody. And we're going to start out that way. It's not going to be about, making more margin and being able and selling at a higher price to start and then go low. He's like, I want people to have access to this. And that was his philosophy from Lazarus Naturals as well. Lazarus Naturals, 60% of our community are veterans. So we offer a massive discount to veterans for our full spectrum CBD products, and which are, really fantastic, high quality stuff. So, and those are, I would say those are $30 to $50 to even $100 cheaper than the next, CBD company selling high dose tinctures.
Wow.
So I think it was the ethos of Sequoia for the past 10 years.
Yeah, but it also makes a ton of business sense, because if you have this existing infrastructure, existing business model, you have that luxury of being able to experiment. And if you can say, hey, we have all this infrastructure, we don't have to outsource all this already, then that investment makes sense, and you can have those lower prices, and that helps you create your own moat. And you guys have one of the most unique business models with this DSD model that you've talked about. And on top of that, you also have some unique things that no one else has done either in the space. And the one that comes to mind is partnering up with the Portland Pickles. So
Yeah, I
how the
wish I
hell
had
did
my
that
hat on.
happen?
Wish I had my hat on.
Can you walk us through that deal? How did this partnership come to be? What were some of the
Yeah, I
challenges
mean, I
navigating
wish I
that?
could
And
say that I was a big part of the deal. I really wasn't at
sure.
all. It was a couple of people from our regulatory team and a couple of people from our marketing team live in Portland. They've been Pickles
Okay.
fans for a long time. They got to know the management of the group, and they thought it was the coolest idea ever. And so, I did a podcast from the stadium there the other day. It's just cool to see, there's these big posters of Cycling Frog. At every bar, there's a little QR code that people can find out more information on it and tell them about what it is. And there's little kids and families running around this place, and it's like the most normal thing you'd ever see. And then you
Right.
don't have a whole bunch of people going, "Oh my God, like what is this?" and
Cover your
creating a
eyes.
ruckus. This is 2 milligram drinks that are legal to sell in the state of Oregon, and you walk past every table and 1 out of every 4 or 5 tables, there's a can or two of Cycling Frog alongside, the local craft beers or, hard alcohol. And I'm telling you, that warms my heart to see that. The more
Me too.
that we can do that, the better the planet's going to be. We all know that. The alcohol industry knows that. And so really, baseball, SA, you couldn't really think of anything more normal to be placing your products in. So thankfully that's happening. Because of that, we've gotten way down the rabbit hole and are very, very close to finding a solution for insurance for venues that are going to be able to have not just Cycling Frog, but 50 of our brands if we get our acts together,
Oh yeah.
Most people going to Live Nation, see concerts, sporting events, are either taking gummies, have smoked a joint outside before, are about to smoke a joint, are out on that, at Miami Stadium down there, Lars,
Camos.
that smoking area.
Yep.
Everybody's smoking a joint out there.
Yep.
So it's not like it's not like it's not around, guys. It's just not normal yet.
This is that first step though. It's normalization. It's integrated into the wild, and to your point, it's not parents covering their kids' eyes. It's just out there, and that's really how it should be. And so, Art, you mentioned you're working on a few insurance projects. I've had a lot of conversations and gone down a lot of rabbit holes about this, specifically because on-premise just never unlocked or exploded in Minnesota, even though that was where my first experience was. So I'm wondering, do you have any collaborations or partnerships in the pipeline that you can tell us about, or is everything kind of hush-hush?
Yeah, I mean, I won't be able to say any names, but I can tell you that there's going to be offers out there to distributors and retailers on-premise venues that they'll be able to get insurance on hemp-derived Delta-9 THC as they would alcohol. The difficult part of all this is how you calculate if there's an accident or somebody dies or, God forbid, any of those things were to happen, how much of the final effect did THC play on that person's psyche? Right. And that's a very difficult thing to do, right? Typically if you're just stoned and that's all you are, you're probably going to want to just take a little nap in the car or, take it easy or giggle with your friends for a little longer, stop by a McDonald's or I don't, but, get some food. Whereas when you're loaded and drinking and doing other things, like people are hopping in the cars, they're not even thinking about it,
Yep.
Right.
You're still kind of with it, no matter how many drinks you have of Cycling Frog.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And we've kind of gone through how Cycling Frog has set itself apart and the vertically integrated and all that kind of stuff. And you guys have seen quite a bit of growth through the partnerships and other ways. But can you break down what's been the different key drivers of that growth specifically, and how do you sustain that moving forward?
Yeah, well, we've had to be really nimble. We've lost huge states recently. We've been stopped in certain states recently. We start up again in certain states recently. So it's really very difficult to calculate, how much you're going to sell in a certain state, which is different from the alcohol industry. I knew how I'd have a sit down at the beginning of the year with my distributors in the wine industry, and we'd figure out allocations and how much the market could bear and all that kind of stuff. We're really shooting, we have no idea where this is going to go. So, our success comes from the fact that we're in 30 states now with alcohol distributors. We've got this strong DSD model that if certain states were going to go down the litigious route or stop everything, there's still going to be this time period where D2C is going to sell, and typically vape stores and stuff like that, unregulated spaces. We do not want to play in that game forever, but it's the game that we're playing today. And then on the alcohol side of it, the closer you can get to White Claw and High Noon, domestic beers, rarely tell a distributor to place our products in the non-alc section. We rarely tell our distributors to place products in slow-moving retail areas. We're all about floor stacks, end caps, volume deals. Being an EDLP company allows us to really play around in that volume space a lot easier than, guys selling at a little bit higher price.
Has direct to consumer been a pretty big channel for you guys?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, direct to consumer is about 35-40% of our sales. So yeah, it's big, even if, gummies is a big part of that, of course. It's expensive to ship drinks to your house. You're paying double than what you go down the street to your Total Wines and More, Lars. I mean, sure, you can get more, different products from different places you're not going to have access to getting. You go on their online stores and buy them, and they'll come to your house. But, eventually, D2C is going to last. Whether or not it lasts through the whole TTB conversation and how we do that is going to be a very important part of the discussions between marijuana and hemp. Mm-hmm. And I think one of your questions, David, are we going to be able to join forces? And I think that is the impetus of me joining the U.S. Hemp Roundtable and being on the board of the Hemp Beverage Alliance, is that we really need to start working closely with marijuana. Cannabis shouldn't have divergent schools of thought. We're all selling a very strong and effective, powerful new way of getting people to have fun, yet enjoying their lives the next day. And that's why alcohol is really behind us now. Alcohol, unfortunately, is not writing massive checks behind this. I wish they would, because, we speak about alcohol all day long as a hemp beverage industry, yet we really need their help. Do they need to put money in and say that they're 100% behind this? Unfortunately, they don't need to right now. Right. They're still making billions of dollars off the alcohol industry. So until, right now, even if we are selling really decent volumes at Cycling Frog and cross states everywhere, we're nowhere near the size we need to be a powerful entity within, let's say, a Littman Brothers or an Anheuser-Busch beverage network. We're an interesting category, super interesting. People love what we're doing. It's not until we're going to be doing 1 million cases in the Florida market that we become a well-known entity in this can space.
Absolutely. And Art, you kind of alluded to the next question I had for you, and I asked this to pretty much every operator and whoever's on the show. I always ask, what are the short-term challenges or obstacles you see for this category, and how are those different from some of the long-term challenges for this whole THC beverage category? And then for you specifically, you've joined a lot of boards. You're now on the U.S. Hemp Roundtable. So again, congratulations on that appointment. Has joining a board like that changed your perspective on what the actual challenges might be for the category versus Cycling Frog, the brand?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we at Cycling Frog, North Fork Distribution, our parent company, we were the first group to sue the state of New York. And, a lot of people were like, what are these guys doing? It was our first year of sales, and we were killing it. I mean, we were doing massive volumes. And so, we needed to protect that, and we wanted a beverage carve-out. We were like, something, if nobody else is going to do this, we're going to do this for beverages. What I've learned, though, over this time is that by having beverage carve-outs, which sound great, and I think that there's no reason why we shouldn't in the future, today, there is a major fight just to save hemp. Intoxicating hemp may not be around next year, guys. So how are we going to be able to affect federal and major state regulatory aspirations positively. And I think that there's probably a dual way of doing that, guys. There's definitely some groups that want to do their own thing just for beverages because that's all they do. And we totally respect that, but they do need to be in cahoots and have some form of a relationship with the U.S. Hemp Roundtable and AHAA to make sure that the talking points don't adversely affect the entire hemp industry. Because we're talking about farmers who aren't making any money right now, genetics companies that aren't making any money right now, manufacturers that have built their facilities to do every type of form factor you can imagine all over the United States. Like, there's a full-on business that's been created in the past 7 years, guys. And so if we're not cognizant of their money, what they want, milligram caps for vape cartridges, like, what are those? What does it mean to, for a gummy and a milligram cap? Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that a 5 milligram cap in a 12-ounce can makes sense for the rest of the industry.
Right.
It might make sense for beverage. So there's a lot of math to do. There's a lot of compromises we need to do. And then when we start to talk to marijuana, why can't marijuana manufacture under the same regulations we do with Delta-9 THC? It's the exact same molecule. Wine, beer, spirits all have alcohol in it, but they come from different things. Marijuana and hemp are different plants, kind of, I guess, same thing. But, it's at the end of the day, it's Delta-9 THC.
Yeah.
So let's say they can make things under 0.3% THC content in the final form. Legislation would need to change. Laws, D2C components. This is a hopefully a battle that's beginning to end right now between marijuana and hemp. I believe that within the next year that there's going to be kinder and more gentle relationship between the two. I think that they're finally started. Well, Curaleaf and GTI and all these other guys that now have drinks and gummies and other things that they're bringing out. So I think that there's going to be this coalescing of the plant. And then when that happens, I think we'll have a much stronger position to solidify this stuff forever, no matter which direction it goes. Now, where we don't want to see it go is into pharma and DEA. And we kind of know what those guys are up to, but we need to really prepare for that fight too.
Yeah, so you've touched on this quite a bit in a few different areas of the conversation here, your dream vision, everything like that. But, put on your, magic hat for a second here. And where do you see THC beverages in 5 years? What does the category look like? What's your dream vision? Is it that, marijuana and or the regulated cannabis market and hemp just become one industry, or what does that look like over the next 5 years?
I think we can keep it separately. I think that if we get into a favorable tax discussion as to bringing taxation at the rec and medical market level to something more appropriate to the CPG world. Secondly, allowing marijuana companies within that state to sell D2C. Why on earth can't they? And then obviously there's a whole bunch of stuff that marijuana guys don't like. They don't like the fact that we do gummies that compete directly with the marijuana gummies, and they don't like the fact that hemp makes THCA flower, right? That the minute you heat that up, you get stoned just like you would smoking a joint. So there are real issues that need to be discussed, but nobody's really, soon there will be a very big conversation happening in a very big state between hemp and marijuana where we're going to get together and we're going to discuss this and we're going to hopefully make it work, where we can come together and provide legislators with, a path forward. I would love to see nothing more than that, right? That would be great. If we could just figure out certain things would keep each side happy. Yeah, and then, David, to allude back to your question, I don't think I answered it. The things that are the most difficult was, I just got a note just now saying that Florida is going to put in new regulations with a 21-day comment period next week or this week. Like, these things just pop out, right? Like Missouri, governor just showed up, said something, screwed up that industry for months. Gavin Newsom, California, got up, said, hey, bad, ban all of it. Those kind of things that we just don't know about, and we're selling on Total Wines and more shelves and doing really well and all happy and going to California on ride with and having a great time. They just end from one day to the next. And then another thing that's going to screw this whole thing up is if the fact that, let's say federally we win something and let's say it goes to the FDA, widens bill, gets us into TTB regulation and all that's, perfect. The guys in California, for example, are going to want carve-outs for their specific types of industries. We need to sit down with each of these types of industries, each types of growers. Like there's fibrous growers, there's people growing for CBD, there's people growing for other certain things. Like how does the whole ecosystem work? And until we figure that out and are able to speak to legislators on a very superficial level, not a very scientific level, but say, hey, this is what is offered here, guys. This cannabis plant, we make, and we have an endocannabinoid system, and we make cannabinoids internally in our bodies, which means that there's this plant sitting out there on this planet that we should be eating and drinking and consuming because our bodies probably need more of it. So anyways, it's a very complex issue, guys. And back to one of your questions, I don't remember which one. The fact of the matter is that this is a health and wellness issue. This is something that needs to be out there. This should be normalized, and it should be everywhere. So my crystal ball is saying 5 years down the road, all the cool bars in the United States will have an area that is THC drinks and kava drinks and kratom drinks and mushroom drinks and a plant medicine focused, healthier buzz, which should be in 750 mLs. They should taste like gin. They could taste like Cabernet Sauvignon without any alcohol in them. I'd like to order wines at a restaurant that taste like Chardonnay or a Sauvignon Blanc but have THC in them instead. So that's the dream.
Yes.
I love it.
To just be everywhere and not have to drink alcohol, which we know is not that healthy for the human body.
Yeah. I love that answer, and actually ties in perfectly for the last question we had for you, Art. So I love to ask this question to everybody on the show as well, but what is your vision or the future for Cycling Frog? What's like the perfect outcome? Is it an IPO one day? Is it joining up or taking over a big alcohol company? Like, what is a perfect outcome for Cycling Frog in the next handful of years here?
That's a good question. I mean, it'll really have to do with what Sequoia wants to do, but
assuming everything's good. Yep.
Yeah, assuming everything's good, there's going to be a handful of buyers out there for at least the top 10 brands.
Absolutely.
It's what's happened in the alcohol industry. Unfortunately, if it's sooner, it may be in the guise of just getting rid of the brand and, putting it under the rug, which has happened in a lot of instances in the alcohol industry. Like, does aviation gin sell well anymore? Not really. But back when it hit and Ryan Reynolds was out there flogging it every single day, it was on fire. But then everyone made $600 some odd million out of that. Casamigos, same kind of thing. I'd imagine that the volumes of Casamigos have gone way down over the past few years now that has gone, because Diageo has a few other brands that are kind of big, and they don't want to ever see disappear. So it depends on who's going to buy it, and it's probably going to be folks that are going to come out of the woodwork, like the Pepsis and Cokes and soft drink groups. It could be the wine companies that have been incredibly quiet up to now. It could be the spirits industry, could be the wholesale groups, you name it. Or it could be international entities that see this as a future of the drinking world.
You don't see a Tilray swooping up a portfolio of brands or anything like that?
Tilray's going to have their own D9 THC drinks within the next month or so. So I'm not... should. All these people have so much more money than any of us do. I'm 53 years old, and is this something I want to do the rest of my life? Yeah, I'm actually really into this whole plant medicine thing, and I think I'll always be an advocate of it. So, Cycling Frog, amongst other brands, will be part of other people's portfolios probably within the next 5 years.
I love it.
Art, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been awesome learning more about you and the incredible work you're doing with Cycling Frog, as well as all the different boards you sit on as well. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure you subscribe and leave us a review on whatever platform you get your podcast. Don't forget to also check out our YouTube channel where you can watch our shows and more. And until next time, guys, cheers.
Awesome. Thanks, Art.